They tried to destroy my life over a bird feeder and a patch of blue flowers. Then they filed a lien to shut me up. But when I helped fix a jammed printer, I uncovered $138,000 in embezzled HOA funds. Now the president wears handcuffs, and I'm the reason this neighborhood finally knows the truth. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Sarah in the comments below. They say the American dream starts with a white picket fence, a front porch swing, and maybe a small patch of soil you can call your own. For me, it was simpler than that. I just wanted peace. After 20 years in the city, sirens, stacked apartments, the constant noise of ambition, I finally found a quiet corner of suburbia to call home. A modest cul-de-sac, tree-lined, tucked behind a stone entrance that read Willow Ridge, a premier HOA community. It sounded fancy. I figured it just meant the grass would stay cut and no one would rev engines at 2 a.m. I was wrong. My little house sat at the bend of the street, where the sun leaned a bit longer in the evenings. The lawn wasn't anything special at first, but I had plans. My grandmother taught me how to grow things. Snapdragons, lavender, hydrangeas, peonies. I could hear her voice in every pruning cut. It was the one thing that made this place feel like mine. By June, my front garden was alive. It wasn't flashy, no exotic showpieces, no neon lawn gnomes, just orderly rows of native perennials, shaded by a hand-built trellis wrapped in morning glories. I liked to sit on the porch and watch butterflies flit through the blossoms. Neighbors walking their dogs would smile and say, "Looks like a postcard." Then came the envelope. It was wedged awkwardly in my mailbox, marked Notice of Violation, HOA Compliance Board. I thought it was a mistake. I opened it at the kitchen counter while sipping coffee. Violation, non-compliant mulch color. Violation, overgrowth above 14 inches. Violation, unapproved trellis installation. I stared at the paper like it was in another language. Brown mulch, the same kind they sell at the local Home Depot. The trellis? I'd made it myself. No taller than my mailbox. Overgrowth? They meant the peonies? At the bottom, in elegant cursive font, was a name, Karen Whitlock, HOA president. I figured it was a misunderstanding. So I walked over, violation letter in hand, and knocked on her door. Her house was 3 lots down, immaculate, trimmed within an inch of its life. She answered in a visor and pearls, smiling like I was interrupting something sacred. "I'm just trying to understand these notices," I said. I wasn't aware there was a specific mulch color. Her smile didn't move. "It's in the bylaws. Page 47. Lesson G12. Uniform Landscaping Standardizations. We mailed the handbook when you moved in." I hadn't seen it, probably lost in the welcome packet stuffed with coupons for roofing companies and local dry cleaners. "I'll make adjustments," I offered. "But if there's a specific list," she interrupted with a sweet tone that had the sting of vinegar. "You'll find we take harmony seriously here. We must preserve curb appeal." That was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I got 3 more notices. One for a hummingbird feeder. Another for unapproved plant coloration. The blue salvia didn't match the neighborhood's neutral palette. She even cited me for having too many visible gardening tools during daylight hours. I started to feel like I was being watched. The garden, once my sanctuary, started to feel like a battlefield. I began to notice something strange. The house across the street had lawn statues, 2 porches down had neon petunias, and someone a block over had a koi pond the size of a kiddie pool. But they never got cited. Just me. It wasn't about mulch. Karen didn't care about flowers. She cared about control, and I was about to become her favorite target. It came in a thick envelope this time. Certified mail, stamped and signed. The kind of envelope that doesn't bring coupons or thank yous. The kind that makes your hands shake before you even open it. The HOA had filed a lien on my property. I read the document 3 times before the words fully registered. I owed them $3,488 in unpaid compliance violation fines. The itemized list included absurdities: $100 for excess floral height, $250 for unauthorized trellis construction, $75 for non-regulation bird feeder, $75 per day late fee, backdated 3 months. They'd never mentioned these were accumulating. No payment deadline, no due date, just letters that read more like suggestions, until now when they'd stacked those suggestions into a financial weapon aimed directly at my home. I called the HOA office immediately, straight to voicemail. I left a call message, then another. No response. So I emailed, politely, at first. I'm requesting an itemized ledger of the fines and dates they were issued, along with the section of the HOA bylaws that support these charges. No reply. 2 days later, I walked down to the HOA office inside the clubhouse. The door was locked. The posted hours on the glass read Monday, Friday, 10 a.m., 2 p.m. It was Wednesday at 12:30. No one inside, no car in the lot. That's when the suspicion turned to something sharper. I started flipping through the bylaws binder I had finally found buried in my welcome folder. It was legalese layered with vague language, aesthetic cohesion, reasonable visual disruption, subjective determination of standards. All phrases that could be bent into any shape someone wanted, like a sword made of rubber flexible, but still sharp enough to cut. The next HOA board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I emailed Karen directly to confirm the time. She responded curtly. Meetings are open to all residents. Notices are posted at least 48 hours in advance. That was it. No time, no location, no agenda. I checked the HOA website. Nothing. That Tuesday night, I showed up at the clubhouse at 6 p.m., just in case. The lights were off, empty. I circled the neighborhood. Nothing. Later that week, I overheard 2 board members laughing on a walk. Apparently the meeting had taken place at 4 p.m. in one of their backyards. Residents should know where to look, one of them had said. I wasn't just being excluded. I was being shut out. Neighbors I'd once chatted with now nodded stiffly. Some crossed the street when they saw me. A few whispered apologies under their breath. I'd help, but I have a lien too. Others just stared at their feet and hurried inside. I was radioactive. Karen had created something beyond a neighborhood association. This was a regime, and questioning it came with consequences. But I wasn't going to roll over. I bought a notebook, labeled it HOA Incident Log. I printed every email, saved every violation letter, took time-stamped photos of my yard from every angle, every week, installed a driveway cam. I started reviewing county property law page by page, sleepless night by sleepless night. The lien wasn't just a threat. It was a legal chain wrapped around my home, tightening slowly. If I tried to refinance, denied. Sell the house, blocked. This quiet place I worked so hard to claim my peace, my soil, my flowers, was now in a kind of financial hostage situation. And Karen held the key. But she made one mistake. She thought I'd stay scared. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that I don't back down when I'm cornered. I dig. I watch. And eventually, I strike. Funny how something as small as a jammed printer can crack open a conspiracy. It was Saturday morning, and I was putting up a new motion light by the garage when a voice called from across the street. Hey, excuse me? I turned to see a lanky teen, maybe 16, shuffling awkwardly in a hoodie. I recognized him as Eli, the treasurer's kid. Quiet, polite, not part of the Stepford clique his parents belonged to. Our printer's acting up, he said. My mom's freaking out. She needs to scan something for the HOA audit packet or whatever. She's about to throw it out the window. You're good with tech, right? I hesitated. But this felt different. An opportunity wrapped in innocent toner. Sure, I said. Let's take a look. Their house was clinical, staged like it was ready to be sold at any moment. Not a crumb or family photo in sight. The printer was one of those bulky all-in-one deals, blinking red like it had a vendetta. I popped the back panel, adjusted the rollers, and tested the scan function with a blank page. That's when it happened. The screen blinked, then hesitated. Instead of returning to home, it pulled up the last scanned document. A spreadsheet. I squinted. It looked like an export from an accounting program. But the numbers, God, the numbers. $7,800. Landscape renovation. $4,200. Fountain repair. Northgate. $2,900 pressure washing. Backlots. Each expense listed under different vendors. But the bank routing numbers, identical. Eli leaned over. Is it working? I snapped a photo with my phone, pretending to stretch. Just about. Might need to update the drivers. Before I could dig further, he unplugged it. Thanks, my mom will probably just buy a new one. She hates this thing anyway. He walked me out, completely unaware he'd handed me the corner thread of the entire HOA tapestry. Back home, I zoomed in on the photo. Vendor names were generic: Brightside Landscaping, Hydro Clean Solutions, Peak Pressure System. But when I searched their EINs in the public contractor database, no registrations, no websites, no tax filings. Then I looked up the HOA's registered bank account using the routing numbers in the document. Took some digging, but I found a tie-in through a small business address. Registered to Mark Whitlock, Karen's cousin. It hit me like a gut punch. The violation letters, the lanes, the weaponized rules. They weren't just arbitrary. They were cover. A distraction. While Karen flooded us with notices about bird feeders and mulch tones, Mark was bleeding the community bank account dry. I pulled up the most recent annual HOA dues summary. 18,6 homes, each paying $1,500 a year. That's nearly $280,000 annually. And no one had seen a single improvement in years. No new paint on the gates. No security updates. The community pool hadn't even been refilled last summer. Budget restrictions, they claimed. I remembered what Karen said to me months ago, smiling through her teeth. We must preserve curb appeal. Now I understood. The rules were a shield. The violations were smokescreens. And the real rot wasn't in my garden. It was in their books. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up cross-referencing vendor names, searching archives of HOA newsletters for mentions of repairs, mapping dates to transactions, even scrolling through Google Street View history to see if fountain repairs had actually happened. Spoiler, they hadn't. By sunrise, I had a timeline. March 18, $6,500 withdrawal for emergency sidewalk repair. No record of repair. April 2, $5,800 for tree removal, not a single stump. April 17, Karen announces fines will increase for persistent violators. The more I traced, the clearer the picture became. Karen wasn't just enforcing the rules. She was creating an illusion of order, while her cousin rerouted thousands into fake companies they controlled. And with no third-party auditor, no transparency, and a terrified neighborhood unwilling to speak up, no one had ever noticed. Until now, this wasn't about one lane anymore. It was about all of them. There's a kind of loneliness that settles in when you realize the system meant to protect you was designed to cage you. But loneliness doesn't last forever. Not when other people are trapped in the same cage. I started asking questions. Quietly, carefully. A retired schoolteacher on the next block, Mrs. Holland, had her own lane, $2,100 for unauthorized holiday lighting. She said it started the year after she refused to let Karen's niece cut her hedges for a volunteer fee. A veteran named Thomas, 2 streets over, showed me a $3,500 fine for non-standard fencing. His came after he openly questioned the board's decision to cancel an election 2 years running. Then there was Alicia. Young mom, single income. She was hit with multiple violations for vehicle obstruction because her babysitter parked in the guest spot too often. Her lien? Over $4,000. She told me she once asked to see the HOA's yearly financial summary at a meeting. Karen told her transparency isn't a requirement in private association. I told them what I found. I didn't show all my cards, but enough. Vendor names, dates, a photo of a transaction summary. I watched their expressions change, confusion giving way to recognition, then disgust, then something I hadn't seen around here in a long time. Fire. We started meeting every other evening, 3 folding lawn chairs and mine, set up in my backyard just past the rose bushes. Not a rebellion, not yet, but something was growing. Something real. We called ourselves the Four. I began assembling everything I had. Every fake vendor, every questionable invoice, screen captures, cross-reference dates, even anonymous testimonies from 2 former board members who moved away suddenly last year. I compiled it all into a digital file, Operation Transparency. Then I filed a formal complaint with the State Attorney General's Office, Consumer Protection Division. It felt like clicking a detonator. The form was buried on the website, designed to be hard to find. But I filled it out with surgical precision. Dates, dollar amounts, connections between HOA board members, the shell companies, the pattern of targeted violation. Then I mailed a physical dossier, certified, with a cover letter. This is not a neighborhood dispute. This is a systemic abuse of fiduciary responsibility and selective legal retaliation against residents who asked questions. The next day, I submitted a parallel request for an emergency financial audit of Willow Ridge's HOA. And then we waited. In lawn chairs. Every time we met, someone new would stop by. Quietly, cautiously. Some stayed to listen. Others dropped off anonymous tips, screenshots, secondhand stories, old notices they'd saved just in case. The backyard became more than a meeting place. It became a kind of neighborhood tribunal. 4 chairs turned to 6, then 8. We weren't just fighting Karen, we were reclaiming our dignity. I started recording everything. With permission. We'd talk strategy, share findings, and piece together the map of corruption that had ruled this community for years behind white fences and pristine lawns. We weren't loud, we weren't violent, but we were watching. And for the first time, Karen wasn't the only one keeping records. There's a moment in every battle where you think you've turned the tide, where momentum feels like it's finally on your side. But in Willow Ridge, calm is just the silence before the next strike. 2 weeks after we filed the complaint with the State Attorney General, I noticed a white SUV idling across the street. County plates. A man in a reflective vest stepped out and started circling my property with a clipboard like he was appraising it for auction. I stepped onto the porch. He didn't wave, just squinted at my roofline. "Morning, can I help you?" He flipped a badge clipped to his vest. Code enforcement. We received a complaint that this residence is being used for commercial activity without a permit. I blinked. What kind of activity? Unregistered landscaping services. Operating a nursery. Possible pesticide violations. Someone said you've been selling plants out of your garage. I almost laughed. I grow flowers. For myself. He didn't crack a smile. Just took a few more notes and walked off without explanation. That afternoon, I got a written warning taped to my door. Karen had made her move. She'd gone outside HOA lines now, reached beyond neighborhood rules, and weaponized the county. That night, I heard the soft buzz of a drone over my backyard. I stood in the dark beneath the arbor and looked up. Tiny red light, silent, deliberate. It hovered for a moment over my garden beds, then zipped off toward the direction of Karen's house. Coincidence? No chance. Over the next week, I was hit with 3 more unannounced inspections. A soil sample request for possible contamination. A noise complaint based on tool usage at prohibited hours. A zoning violation warning for a shed I'd inherited from the previous owner 10 years ago. Every complaint came from an anonymous source. Every officer avoided eye contact. Every conversation felt rehearsed. So I did what I always do. I documented. I filmed every encounter, time-stamped, dated, logged. When the 3rd officer showed up, this one younger, clearly uncomfortable, I offered him lemonade and asked how many calls like this they got. He exhaled slowly. Looked around to make sure no one was within earshot. "She calls in a lot of these," he said. I didn't flinch. "Karen?" He nodded once. "Knows someone in the county clerk's office. Used to date one of our guys. She gets priority responses. Most of these calls wouldn't make it past dispatch otherwise." That was the slip I needed. Not just HOA overreach. Personal connections inside government channels. Karen's web extended beyond the subdivision. She had friends in systems with teeth, and she was willing to sink them into anyone who got too loud. But this wasn't just about harassment anymore. This was about leverage. She wanted to paint me as unstable, non-compliant. She wanted a record, something she could use if things escalated to court. Or worse, she wanted to make me give up. I called Alicia, Thomas, and Mrs. Holland, told them everything. We doubled our documentation, backed up files to cloud servers, emailed ourselves daily summaries, creating unalterable timestamps. I even bought a second SD card and dropped it at a friend's house off-site backup, just in case. The most chilling moment came when I received a formal summons for a zoning hearing. Karen wasn't just throwing accusations into the wind anymore. She was trying to bury me in process. Bureaucratic warfare. Death by paperwork. But she underestimated one thing. I'd already lived through being silenced, through the fear, the late-night notices, the social isolation, the lien. This wasn't fear anymore. This was clarity. Because for the first time, I saw exactly how deep her roots ran. And that meant it was time to start pulling them up. I filed a formal FOIA petition with the county clerk's office, requesting all communication involving my property address over the past 6 months. Emails, reports, dispatch logs, zoning memos. I worded it with surgical care. Neutral, factual, emotionless. Then I waited. 10 business days later, an email pinged into my inbox. A zip file, 14 7-page of government correspondence. It was illuminating. The first few pages were routine, timestamps of inspections, photographs of my yard from county drones, generic dispatch tickets. But buried around page 63 was a series of emails between Karen Whitlock and a county code enforcement officer named Nolan Rhodes. And it was not professional. Hey, can you swing by 226 Cypress again? He's up to something. Just make it look routine. Happy to anything for you. Still on for this weekend? Booked the resort through HOA funds as a business site, check. Let's discuss it over drinks. I stared at the screen for a long time. My blood didn't boil. It chilled. Karen wasn't just meddling, she was coordinating inspections with her ex-boyfriend, a county officer, and she'd used HOA money. Our dues for a romantic weekend getaway, disguised as a vendor retreat. Every rule she'd thrown at me, every fine, every lien, it had all been a smokescreen to distract from her siphoning funds and exploiting public power for private playdates. It wasn't just unethical. It was criminal. I didn't react. I didn't confront. I didn't scream. I got to work. First, I cleaned up the emails screenshotted and converted them into PDFs labeled by date. I cross-referenced the HOA transaction history with the dates of the retreat and found a line item marked Vendor Site Evaluation, Ocean View Resort. There was no vendor tied to that resort. Just her and Nolan. I packaged the evidence into 3 digital folders. Title: Misuse of Public Resources and Collusion. Karen Whitlock, Nolan Rhodes. Summary: Unauthorized inspections, romantic conflict of interest, HOA misappropriation. I used a burner email. No names. Just the documents and a timeline. Password protected. Cloud synced. Printed copy locked in my filing cabinet. I didn't need credit. I just needed sunlight. Because FOIA is more than paperwork. It's light in locked rooms. It exposes handshakes behind closed doors. It burns away plausible deniability. And once the first domino tips, it doesn't stop. 3 days later, the county ethics board confirmed receipt of my complaint and opened an inquiry. The reporter hadn't responded, but I knew they would. Those kinds of leaks don't stay buried. In the meantime, I kept quiet. Kept watering my garden. Karen had no idea I held her scandal in my inbox like a lit match over gasoline. The next HOA board meeting was approaching. She'd stand there again, in her pearls and plastic smile, insisting we respect the rules while her empire crumbled behind her. Only this time, I controlled the narrative. She could find me, send drones, whisper to county friends, all she wanted. But now, I had the truth. And I was done playing defense. The room smelled like lemon floor polish and overconfidence. The HOA quarterly meeting was held in the Willow Ridge Clubhouse, a stucco bunker dressed in pastel trim and fake civility. Rows of folding chairs faced a collapsible table where Karen sat flanked by 2 board members and her cousin, the treasurer, Mark Whitlock, sipping from a metal water bottle like nothing was burning. But it was. They just didn't know it yet. We took our seats, me, Alicia, Mrs. Holland, Thomas, and 6 other homeowners who had slowly, quietly joined our cause. Hidden inside my jacket pocket was a pen with a built-in HD mic and camera. Alicia had a second-angle recording from her purse. Thomas's phone streamed low-res video into a cloud folder. We didn't need to catch everything, just enough. Karen started the meeting the same way she always did, by reading the minutes in that syrupy, sing-song voice she used to feign control. There were minor updates, a reminder about lawn ornament restrictions. Then came financials. And that's when I raised my hand. She paused, eyes narrowed. "Yes, you have a question," she said, already annoyed. "I do," I said, standing. "Can you walk us through the HOA's vendor selection process? Specifically, how Brightside Landscaping, HydroClean Solutions, and Peak Pressure Systems were chosen?" Mark coughed into his hand. Karen blinked once, then replied, "Those vendors were vetted through internal reviews. All invoices are board approved." "Great," I said. "Could you clarify why they all share the same bank routing number?" Silence. A few heads turned. "I have copies," I continued, setting a black binder on the fold-out table like it was an evidence drop in a courtroom drama. Audited spreadsheets, FOIA-requested emails, screenshots from internal documents. It's all here. Karen's face stiffened. "I'm not sure what you think you're implying," she began. "I'm not implying anything," I said, voice steady. "I'm stating that over $42,000 in HOA funds went to shell companies tied to your cousin Mark Whitlock, and that you coordinated with a county code enforcement officer, Nolan Rhodes, to harass residents who asked too many questions." Someone in the back gasped. Another voice whispered, "What the hell?" Karen stood up. "You're out of order." "No," I said, louder now. "We're in order. You're the one who's been operating in the dark." She knocked a binder off the table, papers scattering like doves across the floor. "This is slander. It's documented." Phones went up. Cameras started recording openly now. And that's when Alicia stood up and spoke. "We've submitted everything to the state attorney general and the county ethics board. This meeting is being recorded. If you walk out, it's an admission." Karen froze. Mark leaned in and whispered something. She turned on her heel and stormed out, heels echoing like a gavel down the tiled hallway. Mark followed, red-faced and silent. The room was stunned. Then came the murmurs. "She stole the money?" I knew something was off. "We paid for a fountain repair that never happened." Someone picked up the binder and began flipping through it. The HOA secretary looked pale. And in the back, a neighbor I barely knew held up her phone, still recording. "Say that name again," she asked. "The county guy?" "Nolan Rhodes," I said. "Code enforcement, Karen's ex." She nodded. "TikTok's gonna love this." She was right. That night, the video hit 200,000 views. Within hours, the HOA's Facebook page was flooded with demands for answers. Former residents chimed in, confirming suspicious charges. A local reporter posted a teaser, "Suburban scandal brewing in Willow Ridge, corruption at the HOA level." By morning, the damage was done. Karen and Mark went dark. Phones disconnected. Emails bounced. Their homes sat untouched, blinds drawn. The once pristine order they ruled with an iron bylaw had shattered under the weight of sunlight. The neighborhood was buzzing, but for once not in fear. People talked openly, on porches, in driveways, over fences. They shared copies of the binder, watched the TikTok clips, like a true crime docuseries. The community wasn't just awake. It was on fire with purpose. And Karen had finally learned that the one rule she couldn't bend was the truth. But in the end, the system, when documented, challenged, and exposed, broke them. Spring came late that year. The frost held on longer than usual, like it didn't trust the thaw. But slowly, surely, the ground softened. The soil opened up, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I planted without fear. The lien had been cleared, the violations erased. My record was clean, something Karen had tried to bury beneath paperwork and intimidation. But she was gone now. So was Mark. The old guard dismantled, replaced by a new, transparent HOA board that held open meetings, posted financials online, and, get this, even handed out free native plant seeds as part of a community beautification grant. We used to joke that hell would freeze before the HOA handed out wildflower mixes. Guess I owe the devil a scarf. I spent a weekend rebuilding the trellis. Stronger this time, cedarwood, anchored deep. Morning glories wrapped around it like they remembered where they bloomed last. I added new beds, coneflowers, goldenrod, and those same defiant blue salvias. Karen once flagged as aesthetic disruption. Not anymore. I was halfway through setting stones for a small path when I heard footsteps on gravel. A young couple stood at the edge of the driveway. Nervous smiles, holding a toddler who was trying to eat a dandelion. "Sorry to bother," the woman said. "We just moved in. Lot 15, saw your garden on that video. You're kind of the reason we chose this place." I blinked. She smiled again. "We wanted to live somewhere with a backbone." I laughed, not bitter. Just surprised. "Well," I said, "hope you like slow justice and fast-growing lavender." We talked for a while. I gave them tips on soil depth and pest deterrence. She asked about the HOA. I told her the truth. It's better now. But the reason it's better is because people stopped whispering and started documenting. Because folks who got stomped on finally stood up together. Before they left, she asked if I was on the board. I shook my head. No, I was asked, but I declined. She tilted her head. "Why?" I gestured to the garden. "This is my office, and besides, I keep better watch from here." She laughed, then looked up. "Is that a camera?" I smiled. Mounted discreetly under the porch eaves was a solar-powered motion cam, always recording, always backed up to the cloud. Not paranoid. Just prepared. We said our goodbyes. The kid waved with a fistful of weeds. And I returned to my garden. The wind moved softly through the trellis. The hum of bees felt like background music to a life finally restored. My hands sank into warm soil, clean earth. No liens. No letters. No watchers, but the sun and the slow bloom of justice. That night, I sat on the porch with a mug of coffee, looking out over the lawn. The camera light blinked once. Not in warning. Just in acknowledgement. I didn't need control. I didn't crave power. I had peace. And I had earned every petal of it. If you've ever been bullied by laws, blindsided by bureaucracy, or silenced by a system, you're not alone. Every neighborhood has its secrets. Every rulebook has its cracks. Keep your camera rolling. Keep your records clean. Because one day, the garden you protect might be the proof that saves someone else's home.